This one is for developers. Now, I'll base this example on Angular, but it's a concept that can be used anywhere. And the concept is never use APIs directly in your components. AKA, when you design your application and you design the architecture, always abstract the APIs from your component. In other words, you got your component that maybe is a login component. That login must be calling an API at a certain point to allow a login. It's very tentative, as is a simple component, is a simple functionality, to just include the HTTP service from Angular or whatever service from your framework you're gonna use, and then on form submit, login, HTTP, API, whatever, pass the parameters, and so on. And in a simple stuff like that, you could see like, well, it just works. And then I'm gonna tell you, well, what if tomorrow you need to change the APIs? The microservice that serves the login changed completely. It doesn't only change the URL, it also changed the format you need to send and receive, and you're gonna receive the data for this login. You need to update your component. Now, the login is very simple component. Imagine to do a sign up, then you have the login. Imagine to have as many functionalities as you want in your application. If you start to put API call here and there around the components, every time an API change, let's imagine your backend release the version 2 of the APIs and everything changes, you need to go in every single component, change the template, change the JavaScript, do a lot of work around, and it's very, very, very easy that you're gonna leave bugs around. And it's also tedious. If instead you abstract these API calls in a service, your component just gonna call the service. So you're gonna have a user service and you do user.login and you pass me the form data, username and password. What's gonna happen in the service, it's not relevant to the component. So you'll never touch your component again. And what happens is, on your service, you're gonna implement the logic that calls the API calls and give back the data. If this API calls, you just have to change that service. Now, if you will use the login service, you'll probably use only once in your application in one place, but imagine a user update service. You may have updates in different areas of your application because you can have user settings, user profile, user picture, and so on. So having a user.update, so a service which is called user and call it an update function in one single place, is much better than calling APIs in every single component. So first of all, you reuse the code. Secondly, it's much easier to maintain. And furthermore, it's much easier to update if there are changes. But finally, what's really key is that doesn't matter how your API change, one day you can completely swap to another API, your component doesn't change. You never have to change the template. You never have to change the JavaScript code behind your component or TypeScript code. As long as in the service, you make sure that the data that you receive and the data that you pull back keep following the same format. So it's gonna be in your service to add a little bit of logic to reformat the data you send and you get back in a way that are suitable for your component. And when you do that, you can see that you can change your API, the API gonna give you back data in another way, you just convert them, translate them, transpose them, how you wanna call that, in a language, in a model which is suitable for your component. So the bottom line is, this has become much more efficient, you are much faster to implement changes, and there are gonna be much less bugs. So always try to abstract your components that represent the UI, the user interface, the user interactivity from the APIs, adding a service in the middle. That's why at Angular, the Google developers created services mainly to abstract what is the user interaction with what you're gonna do with the backend.